The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
The destiny of America is always safer in the hands of the people than in the conference rooms of any elite.
Sam Seder.
They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
Ever get the feeling you've been cheated?
It is Wednesday, March 24th, 2021. My name is Sam Seder. This is the five-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, Alec MacGillis, author of Fulfillment, Winning and Losing in One-Click America. He's a senior reporter for ProPublica and the recipient of the George Polk Award, the Robin Toner Prize. Also on the program today, in the wake of two mass shootings, gun control moves to the forefront. Will this time be any different? Report shows intense Republican coordination for the widespread voter suppression legislation we're seeing being rolled out across the country. Meanwhile, conservative Democrats push to diminish the minimum wage targets set in the $15 minimum wage legislation bill. Meanwhile, Janet Yellen pledges to increase tax deductions for wealthy homeowners. Rashid Tlaib Premier Jayapal intro a bill to provide every American $2,000 a month. Former Yale professor says in a lawsuit that Alan Dershowitz, author of Cancel Culture, got her fired over a tweet that she made about Alan Dershowitz and Donald Trump. Saudi coalition that includes us, at least defensively, supposedly, bombs Yemeni's grain ports in the midst of a catastrophic famine in that country. Bibi Netanyahu's party Likud wins most seats in the Knesset, but short of a governing majority. And it's Equal Pay Day. Reminder, women make 82 cents for every dollar a man makes in the same job. Worse for single moms. All this and more on today's Majority Report. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, that was abrupt. Sorry. We got to get a little bit of a better fader for that. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for joining us today. Oh, as you know, let's get this out of the way. Apparently today is another white shirt Wednesday.
Hashtag WSW.
Yeah.
Right.
Despite my continued insistence that I have a very specific color shirt schedule, the light blue on Monday, the darker blue on Tuesday, Wednesday's always white, and then laundry day is Wednesday, so I can start over again with the light blue shirt. Emma insists on wearing white on Wednesdays.
Well, it's not an insistence. I mean, I think you should take it about how cool of a lady I am, that I don't really think about my wardrobe that much. Well, at least that's how I'd like to present it. I don't even remember. I wore
cool
orange.
Of a lady?
Right, I'm a cool lady. I wore orange on Monday. I don't remember what I wore yesterday. But those weren't coordinated. I chose this shirt based on the weather. It's unfortunate. I wore my glasses today.
It's unfortunate.
Right?
It's definitely
I don't
unfortunate.
know. I don't know.
It's unfortunate. I mean, that's the thing. It's like maybe I got to post the schedule of my shirt wear because it's
well,
always
we have
the same.
the Google Calendar. Why don't you just do that?
I should do that. I should do that. Reminder.
You could just switch up your shirt rotation one time.
That I cannot do.
Well,
that's not. I'm not
asking for trouble.
that can't happen. No, then I go into a mild state of panic. I wouldn't know what to do. I can't spend that time thinking about that. That's why I have a schedule. Meanwhile, let's go to this. We, mentioned early up front here that that gun control has moved to the forefront again of the national conversation. The reason why it is unlikely to pass, or at one of them, but probably one of the biggest ones, at least, before you can even have a conversation, is because of the filibuster. And yesterday, Mitch McConnell reiterated his threat to Democrats if they, and we should make it clear, the filibuster is gone for judicial nominees, both Supreme Court and federal judicial. Those were two different steps. The filibuster is gone for nominees of cabinet secretary, of Senate, of positions in the administration requiring Senate confirmation. That's gone. All those things have been rolled back by Democrats and Republicans over the past 10 or so years, essentially because Republicans were so relentless in obstruction. And now Mitch McConnell, you'll remember Mitch McConnell is the one who prevented a Supreme Court nominee from getting a hearing because it was only a year out from an election, is claiming that if the Democrats get rid of the filibuster for legislation, he's going to go scorched earth. And I think in part, I think there's a strategy of why he came out and said this blatantly false assertion about the filibuster yesterday. This is Mitch McConnell on Capitol Hill.
Senate floor, you argue the filibuster is not rooted in racism. Historians differ on this. Are you concerned about the perception? If it is used against advancing voting rights, certainly the public perception is that Republicans are going to use this tool to make it harder for black people to vote.
Yeah, actually, historians do not agree. It has no racial history at all. None. So there's no dispute among historians about that. I make no apologies for opposing this bill. You've heard Senator Blunt outline the various flaws involved in it. This is all about a power grab. If it were related to civil rights, why were the Democrats using the tool last year and the year before that and the last 6 years? Why is it all of a sudden a civil rights issue when it wasn't for them as recently as last year? Honestly, with all due respect, that is nonsense. This is a power grab. It's all about trying to take over the American election system. It has all kinds of flaws, and under Senator Blunt's leadership, we're going to begin to point them out in great detail starting tomorrow in the Rules Committee.
Now, they're talking about H.R. 1, or now introduced in the Senate as S1. This is a voting rights bill. It also has anti-corruption measures, too, in terms of our elections and in terms of transparency for donations. But it is just simply a fact that the filibuster, particularly, it has changed over the past 20 years because McConnell started to deploy it in every circumstance possible, imaginable. But for the first, 50, 60 years in the existence of the filibuster, it was deployed primarily for to stop the expansion of, or I should say, the expansion of rights for black people and voting rights for people in this country, but really just sort of like the creation of parity of rights to some degree.
Yeah, and it was deployed so sparsely and only really specifically for the purpose of blocking civil rights legislation that Northern Democrats at the time, or Northern liberals, kind of just allowed the Southern racists to use it because they wanted to kind of throw them a bone for other legislative priorities like the New Deal back in the day to get through. I mean, there's a quote Adam Gentleson took from Senator Richard Russell in 1949, where he basically admitted that this was really about blocking civil rights legislation. So there's no real differing historical data on this. The proof is in the pudding. This was how things worked back when the filibuster was being utilized decades before. He's trying to muddy the waters, McConnell, now, and frankly, I actually think it's one of the best strategies he's deployed since he's now become the minority leader, because now the conversation is about racism, and regular people who aren't paying attention to the historical context might go, wait, yeah, they were using it back during when the Republicans were in power. How are they turning around and calling the Republicans racist when obviously, you know, there have been many Democrats, even when the Republicans were in power, who were saying once we are in the majority, we need to do filibuster reform.
I agree. I agree, and even would add to that it sort of muddies the water about the racist quality, but it also, look, during the years of Trump and Obama, all of our politics got highly racialized on both sides, and by making this about the notion that Democrats are ostensibly calling them racist because of the, around the filibuster, as opposed to the fact that, like, we know their voter suppression techniques focus primarily on communities of color, particularly black people, because they know the ratio, the relationship between being black and being Democratic is, 9 to 10, essentially. Maybe a little bit more. They can, they will target minority districts, black districts, and they know if they can suppress the votes there, they are going to help themselves. So yes, I agree. It's a way of racializing this issue, which it is racial, but it's a way for them to use a clarion call and get their folks in support of not getting rid of the filibuster. Frankly, I don't think it's going to work. People don't care about the filibuster, period, end of story. They care about legislation that's passed, and none of them want to own a lot of these things that they vote for or against, particularly against. But we will talk more about that in the coming days. We got to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll be talking to Alec MacGillis, author of Fulfillment, Winning and Losing in One-Click America. Folks, this is a great way, particularly during COVID, but just in general, because frankly, I did it, years ago for my parents. Now, maybe 2 or 3, I can't tell how many years ago it was, but you want to stay in touch with the people in your life. Also, you get older like I am, you realize that there are going to be folks, aren't going to be around, or your kids may not have the depth of the relationship with your parents or your cousins or whatever it is that you want them to have. This is a great way to stay in touch and to develop those sort of multi-generational understandings. StoryWorth, you can feel closer to your loved ones no matter what the distance is. StoryWorth is an online service, helps your loved ones share stories through thought-provoking questions about their memories and personal thoughts. It's a fun way to engage with your family, especially those you don't see in person, but also, nobody's going to be around forever. Every week, StoryWorth emails your family member a different story prompts, like questions that you've probably never thought to ask of your grandparents or your parents. I guess you could do it with your kids and make cousins. Like, has your life turned out differently than you imagine it would? Like even stuff like, what was your favorite car that you owned? I mean, anything can prompt a whole bunch of stories. And it has, in some ways, these are sort of like incidental fun stories. In other ways, it lets you learn fairly profound things about people who are close to you that you may not have realized. And what happens is, after 1 year, StoryWorth compiles all the stories, including photos if you want, into a beautiful keepsake book that's shipped for free. This is a great way to... It's great for the giver. Frankly, it's one of those gifts that you give, and it the person who's getting it, it's engaging to them and it's fun for them, and they feel like people are interested. And then for you as a giver, it's actually you're sort of getting a gift that's going to give for a long time. It's really the whole thing is an awesome experience. And then you get the book, you give it to your kids, they learn about their grandparents. You learn something about your parents, that type of thing. You can now give your loved ones the gift of spending time together wherever you live with StoryWorth. Get started right away with no shipping required by going to storyworth.com/majority. You'll get $10 off your first purchase. That's StoryWorth, one word, .com/majority for $10 off. Okay, want to welcome to the program Alec MacGillis. He is a senior reporter for ProPublica, recipient of the George Polk Award, and author of his most recent Fulfillment, Winning and Losing in One-Click America. Alec, welcome to the program.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
And I'm here with Emma Vigeland. I got to tell you, the book is really it's fascinating, and it seems to be like a story of a lot of different things in many respects, but I gotta say, I think it's like one of the best books to illustrate what people are talking about when they talk about the need for a reinvigorated antitrust in this country.
Yeah.
Because it shows how much broader the danger of monopolization is than just impacting workers. And I think that's really just an impressive thing. Let's just start with this. From a consumer standpoint, from like the standpoint of all of us, how many people use Amazon? Just how big is it in terms of just a retail outlet, or I guess.
Yeah. I think it's hard for us to grasp really just how enormous and dominant it's gotten, especially, of course, in this last year, when so many more Americans, turned to sort of a one-click kind of existence during the pandemic. Even before the pandemic, there were well over 100 million Prime members in America, which that you can put that up against some election numbers in midterm election years, and there's more people in Prime than voting in our democracy. Just this last year, sales went up 40% year over year. Over already a huge base prior to the pandemic. 500,000 more people, 400,000 or 500,000 more people hired by Amazon. That does not even include the 500,000 truck drivers they have, which don't count as Amazon employees. This company's stock went up 86% year over year. Bezos's wealth up $58 billion in a single year. The scale of their breadth of warehouse space went up 50% just in a year. What's happened in the last year is just, it's so hard to grasp. And I think that one reason we actually have a hard time grasping it is that we all feel to some degree complicit in it, because so many of us did rely on the company in our pandemic sort of approach. The alacrity with which a lot of Americans embraced the one-click life this last year really was kind of something to behold.
And there's a quality of the story that you tell that is in some ways similar to like what we were talking about with Walmart like 10 years ago. And I guess Walmart still may be the biggest, I off the top of my head, I don't, but still the biggest employer. And Amazon, I guess, is number 2.
Yes.
But there's another dimension to this story that is fascinating, because we have this story of wealth inequality in this country and this concept of two Americas that has gone back for a while. But you and this, I think, long, well-known story of a rural-urban divide, but you outline a story of of two Americas, but it's not necessarily urban-rural. Let's weigh into that, because that really is the essence of this on some level. There are major winners and losers that Amazon have created Walk us through that.
Yeah, that it is the essence of it. This book actually started not as a book about Amazon, but as a book about regional inequality, these growing gaps between places in America. It's partly an urban-rural gap, but it's also a gap between cities, between sort of winner-take-all cities like Seattle, San Francisco, DC, New York, Boston, and then a much larger group of sort of left-behind cities and towns. And and the book uses Amazon as a frame to sort of explain that problem. And it's a very handy frame because it's so incredibly ubiquitous. So it's just everywhere. So just a good way to take you around the country and what we're becoming as a country. But it's also a good frame because it has itself contributed to this problem, to these regional divides. Because the company has essentially, in very blunt terms, kind of sucked all this prosperity and business activity out of a whole swaths of the country and then kind of concentrated it in the places where it resides, very much as other tech giants have done as well. So you end up with sort of headquarters cities like Seattle and DC that are now just have all the sort of high-paying jobs for the company. DC just got 25,000 more of these high-paying headquarters jobs in that whole HQ2 bonanza, and then you have the sort of the warehouse towns, the cities that now have to sort of settle for the $15 an hour, very grueling, very kind of atomizing warehouse jobs. And it's a situation that is really not good for either set of cities. That's the important point. It's even the winter cities are struggling with credible housing affordability problems, congestion, massive displacement of longtime residents, and then of course the left behind cities struggle with blight and abandonment. So it's a very unhealthy thing for our country to be this off kilter, and we simply haven't had gaps this big between regions before. This is a new thing for us.
Yeah, I just want to put a fine point on that last thing you said, just so that people get a notion of just how much of a change this is for the country. Now, I know you're a Western Massachusetts guy. I grew up in Worcester, Mass, which is almost like the opposite of this dynamic. Worcester has been one of the most static places probably in the country. It never has a boom. It never has a bust. It just sort of moves along. But that's sort of the way that the country as a whole was for a long time. Like just outline that disparity before we start going into the specifics of the two ends of these disparities.
Right. I mean, you can quantify this. I mean, back in 1980, most of the country, there were very few parts of the country that had median income that was more than 20% above the average or below 20% of the average. So the most were kind of clustered around the average. Since then, huge whole swaths of the country have now fall above or below those extreme poles. Used to be that only the deep parts of the deep south and Appalachia would fall sort of way below the 20%. Now entire swaths in the Midwest do, and the Great Plains as well. Meanwhile, it used to be that just some suburbs of New York or DC would fall above the 20% line. Now entire sections of the coast are above that 20% line. Another way of looking at this, in the 1960s, the 25 wealthiest cities in the country included all sorts of cities in the Midwest. Cleveland, Milwaukee, Des Moines, Rockford, Illinois, were the top 25 cities in the country in income. Now only a couple cities not on the coast make that list. There's just been this incredible sort of sorting out and a kind of hollowing out of all these cities that used to be doing pretty darn well, and so you've ended up. It's very similar to what we have with our income inequality. I mean, we talk so much about the growth of the 1% and the top 10% and all that, to unprecedented levels of inequality, and something very similar has happened at the regional level, and it's so unhealthy for the country and for our politics.
Can you expand on how Amazon specifically got to this point then? Just track it through time, really, because Amazon started in Seattle, and then obviously it's exploded to this ubiquitous, all-powerful force in this country and worldwide that we're seeing today. But just can you track along this dynamic how Amazon grew just through, I guess, the early 2000s to now?
Sure. I mean, the way to think about this problem, this regional inequality problem, and how it relates to big tech is to think of it. So I think there are two different important points. One is that tech, by its very nature, has an agglomerating effect. That's the fancy word that the economists use, where it's a winner take all thing, where a place like Silicon Valley happens, that kind of clustering happens because innovation happens in clusters. It happens in proximity. It happens when all these, great minds are kind of brought in the same place with the venture capitalists. And it's different in that sense than the manufacturing economy, where once you had a given industrial innovation, you could go out and use it, build a plant anywhere where you had labor and natural resources. But with tech, you want to be in the same place. It's that human capital is all that matters. So it's drawing that capital together. So you have that agglomerating effect. That's why one reason Amazon moves to Seattle, sets up shop in Seattle, is that Microsoft is already there. And so Amazon knows that it can draw some of that human capital, some of that tech talent away from Microsoft. That's why it goes there. It also goes there because it was going to be better for its taxes to go there. So you have that sort of basic agglomerating effect, winner take all effect in the tech economy. But then on top of that, we have, as Sam mentioned at the outset, we have gotten so weak in our application of antitrust in our country that we've allowed the giants to get so big that and been so just soft in our approach to that the agglomerating effect gets even worse because you end up with just a handful of companies that have grown so dominant in the tech economy, which means that even more of the wealth and prosperity will be drawn to the places where those few happen to reside. If there were more of them, they would be in more places. I mean, I'm speaking very kind of crude terms here, but instead there is the one Amazon that is now so immensely dominant. So Seattle ends up with, and then now DC ends up with this extraordinary levels of a kind of hyper prosperity that are more extreme than one would exist if these giants had not been allowed to get as big as they were.
There's like these things, their gravity, their like gravitational pull grows exponentially with their size. Right. And this notion of this agglomerating effect is fascinating. But let's talk about tax arbitrage, because that was something that in its founding, that seems to be like the Amazon and Bezos, I guess, had basically this very specific strategy, which was like, we could get paid to do the stuff that is actually going to bring us value when it comes to these locations that we're going to land in. And we're also going to make sure that we don't pay taxes. If we can avoid taxes at all costs, that's going to be a dictating factor. Walk us through that. I mean, that has to do both with what they did online. They sort of busted in the way that almost like Uber does or did back in the day in a city. And they also placed their logistics. Part of their logistics equation was taxes too.
Absolutely. Tax avoidance was at the heart of their early success, and for years as they grew. The way it worked was that you had this massive advantage for e-commerce as they started out in the 90s, where you didn't have to assess sales taxes on your customer the way that a physical a rival's shop with physical brick and mortar stores had to assess sales taxes. The way the law was applied was you didn't have to assess sales taxes as an e-commerce seller if you didn't have a physical building in a given state. So that's a huge reason why Amazon went to Seattle instead of Silicon Valley back in the 90s, is that if they'd set up shop in California, they would have had to assess sales taxes on all their sales in California, which is of course the biggest market in the country. So instead they go to a smaller state where it doesn't cost you so much to have to assess sales taxes on those people. And then the customers in that small state. So they go to Washington State. Then as the company grows, it's very kind of strategic about where it puts its warehouses, because once you put a warehouse in a given state, you're going to have to assess sales taxes on sales in that state. So they actually avoid all sorts of larger states large population states for quite a long time as they're growing. Don't put warehouses there. Finally, they get to the point where the company is so dominant, is so huge, is so popular, that the and is making it's this pledge of 2-day delivery and then 1-day delivery, to prime customers, where the need to be closer to your customers wherever they are, it becomes more important. So they start putting warehouses everywhere, even if it means having to assess sales taxes there. But then of course on top of that you have sales avoidance on many other levels as well, with most notably at the federal level, managing to keep their federal income tax bill incredibly low. Like in some recent years, it's been zero, despite their incredible profits, because of the way that they're able to move profits offshore to Luxembourg, to claim huge losses, and so there's that whole game, which of course they're not alone in playing that game. A lot of the tech giants play that game, and then they're also, meanwhile, they're also reducing their tax bill by being incredibly aggressive in seeking subsidies and incentives from local communities where they're seeking to build warehouses and data centers. So even as they're basically being grudgingly agreeing to start assessing sales taxes as they expand, they're also getting massive subsidies and incentives from communities where they're going in to build their warehouses. All these towns and cities that are desperate for any kind of investment or jobs are throwing tax subsidies at Amazon to build warehouses that are going to have these quite low paid jobs as the reward.
And let's be clear, I mean, even in places that aren't so desperate, during this whole HQ thing, people were willing to throw all sorts of tax breaks for the idea that Amazon would end up providing jobs there, when in fact Amazon's going to end up providing jobs there if it's in Amazon's best interest to do so at the end of the day. I mean,
we saw that in New York City, is what I was going to say, right? They came here anyway, albeit in a smaller capacity, but they wanted on top of that a bunch of taxpayer money to bribe them to come here, and it ended up, they want to be have a New York presence anyway.
That's the best business move you can get, is to get paid to do something that's already in your best interest.
Exactly.
But so all right, so this let's go to some of the stories that tell this story of this, and you said at the top that Amazon was the frame for this geographic disparity in a really unique, in the context of the history of the United States, type of disparity. And at one point I want to circle back as to how it changes human behavior, right? Because there was a time where I'm like, oh, I'm living in Dayton, I think I'll go to, I'll go to some other random city with 200,000 people, and my life could very well be more or less the same. And it's you don't have that flexibility of the mobility in the same way you do if you're looking for their similarly situated opportunities. But let's look at, I guess let's start with Bill Bodani. I don't know how to pronounce it.
Yeah, Bodani.
And he really captures sort of like what has changed for a similarly situated person looking for work that isn't necessarily white collar. And he's doing this in, I guess this is in Baltimore.
Yes, outside Baltimore. This was really is kind of like the core chapter of the book on what's happened in this one spot outside Baltimore, where it's a place called Sparrows Point Peninsula, just outside the city, that used to be home to the largest steelworks in the entire world. Bethlehem Steel had 30,000 workers there in the late 50s. Was there for the entire century, and a huge company town. And Bill Bodani worked there for more than 30 years. Was really tough work, had physically challenging work. He had a bunch of injuries on the job, finally left the job after one of these injuries. But he really liked the work. He just felt this incredible sense of purpose there and camaraderie. And there's a reason why he stayed working there for more than 30 years. Made really good money, well over $30 an hour by the end, incredible benefits. But so he left that job, and then the steelworks went out of business as part of the sort of across the board decline in the American steel industry, and it's kind of astonishing. This entire massive steelworks, this huge industrial skyline, has been wiped completely clean off of this peninsula. It's just gone, and it's been replaced by a bunch of warehouses. It's now a big sort of logistics business park, and it includes not one but two Amazon warehouses now, and Bill went back to work at one of these warehouses a few years ago. Yeah, he was having health troubles. His wife was having health troubles and needed some more money, and he went back for a job driving a forklift there, making a fraction of what he'd been making at that exact same location for Beth Steel, with a job that was now less dangerous than the one he had at Beth Steel, but a job that he just couldn't stand. He was not only making less money, he felt no purpose on the job, had no camaraderie, had no sense of meaning whatsoever. Was constantly sort of under the beck and call of various young supervisors who were just riding him to make more deliveries on the forklift from the trucks. Not enough time for bathroom breaks. He's an older guy, had to go to the bathroom more often, never had enough time to go. A couple times ended up having to pull up his forklift and go behind the forklift and hope the cameras wouldn't catch him, and got in trouble for trying to distribute some union literature to some of the younger workers there, kind of encouraging them to think about organizing, and finally quit just a few years into the job, just couldn't hack it. And to me, that the story of his, of him in Sparrows Point is just really, it's just so emblematic of what's happened to work in this country, sort of the kind of work that the mass of Americans, now rely on and turn to. Once it was, not that long ago, was a job like the Beth Steel job, and now in that exact same location, it's the Amazon warehouse job, and what's been lost in that transition.
And we should say also his pension was diminished, which is like a whole nother subset of this story, obviously. But the stuff like with the bracelet, the electronic bracelet, like if you're dilly dallying, you get basically a shock. I mean, it's more or less. But all of that just sort of tells that disparity, and that happens in one place. But now we have this sort of the regional disparity. So let's compare, let's talk about Dayton, Ohio, because you have another person that you follow there, and he is having a very rough go of it as well. And this is to sort of show that disparity, not so much in the context of time, but in terms of location between Seattle. Tell us about in Dayton.
So Dayton is such an important place, and it's an important story, partly because, I mean, it just shows what's happened to so many. It stands for so many of these Midwestern cities that were once really the font of so much innovation and prosperity in this country. And Dayton was the Silicon Valley of its time. I mean, people say that, and it's true. It was the Wright brothers. It was all these incredible inventors and innovators in the early 20th century who came up with all these advances from which so much prosperity flowed. All these automotive engineering advances, the cash register, all this stuff came out of Dayton, and the Wright brothers. And then now the city has just went through a terrible time in really the first decade of the century, was just devastating to a place like Dayton. All these auto parts jobs lost following the China being admitted into the WTO. WTO was devastating to manufacturing towns like Dayton. Then they get clobbered by the opioid epidemic. And so you have someone like Todd Swallows, who I focus on in this chapter, a young man whose father had a successful small trucking company that took auto parts up and down the I-75 corridor up to Detroit. And but that business went bankrupt in the Great Recession, and Todd is left as this young man completely on his own, trying to make his way through a succession of just incredibly long list of low-paid jobs. restaurant jobs, retail jobs. And he ends up working finally in making cardboard boxes. When I met him, he was living in a shelter with his family because their life had gotten so unstable that they're living in a large homeless shelter in Dayton while he's working for a company making cardboard boxes for Amazon. And so he's sort of at the bottom of that ecosystem, bottom of the food chain that leads all the way up to the glimmering headquarters in Seattle, with Bezos and the 17th floor dog park balcony in an Amazon tower, where the Amazon headquarters employees can take their dogs out for a stroll on the AstroTurf with a 17th story view of the Seattle skyline. And then there's Todd back in Dayton making the cardboard, really in his, and he's quite a young man. He has incredible work ethic. He's just kept at it all these years, but you can just see so powerfully the effects of his economic instability and kind of unraveling of him in the kind of the landscape around him. And he's been through, it's the chapter there is pretty candid about some of the things that kind of come with that kind of downward mobility and instability, and it just it's just meant to show sort of what is really happening sort of on the ground at the one end of that ladder.
You see the knock-on effects of how it ends up. He becomes abusive, and just the implications of having that amount of pressure and really finding no way to get ahead, despite the fact that he is so determined to do it. There's just no opportunity there.
It's heartbreaking. I mean, he so badly wants to be a good father and a good provider, the way that his father had been for him. But it's just a different world that they're inhabiting now, just 20 years later.
I mean, there's so you had mentioned up at the top that Amazon was a frame to show this dynamic of this new type of regional disparity, or it's not even regional, right? I mean, it's in some respects it's highly localized disparity. Is Amazon a frame for it, or is it? I mean, how much does it contribute? I mean, let's say that we were to go back in time 20, 30 years ago and say, no, you got to pay your taxes. And at one point, we're going to not allow you to have such control over this marketplace that you've created. You can't take a vig on certain things. You can't push things that, we're going to apply like a sin fin rule to the way that you do your products. You can't own the product and also own the sort of the pipes that deliver it. We were to do all this, and we figured out some way, I'm not sure how we would do that, where it's like, diminish the value of aggregating all of the techies in one area, whether it's 128 in
Boston,
or in Seattle, Austin, Texas, maybe is trying to like. Would this problem still exist if we were able to just deal with Amazon, or is Amazon like a main driver but also indicative of a bigger problem?
It's definitely both. I really see it as both. I see, and I had a lot of discussions with Amazon about this, of course, because they, I did talk to them at length for the book, and their basic, counter was, if it weren't us, it'd be someone else. If there are these larger structural forces, there are these changes in technology, the internet was going to happen, e-commerce was going to happen. It would have been someone else with some other name, but it just happens to be us. What I think that misses is that yes, of course there are these larger structural things that have happened, but the company has made specific decisions, and actions over the years that have made things even sort of worse in these ways. Whether it's this particularly aggressive pursuit of tax avoidance, or or the decision to put HQ2 in Washington, which they didn't have to do. They could have tried to make it work somewhere else. They could have tried to, make it work in St. Louis, or there being especially, the productivity demands in the warehouses being especially draconian as they are. But so Amazon's choices have made this worse than sort of the generic scenario. But by the same token, we as a country have made it worse by allowing by not doing some of the things you mentioned, by letting the giants get as big as they are, by just letting it all be so untrammeled, that we absolutely, it did not necessarily have to be this way, and we could have mitigated it. Whether whether of course certain forces are still going to push us in certain directions, but you can, things are always on a scale. I don't like thinking of things as one way or the other way. Things are on a scale. We didn't let things have to get so extreme on the scale, and it's why these fights that are looming now in Washington, on the antitrust front, are so important, because one can certainly do things to mitigate and to somewhat moderate these extremes.
So I guess that brings us to the Do you want to go, Sam?
Well, I just want to just pursue that one thing, because there's two things right there that we can do on the mitigation front. One is happening in Bessemer, Alabama. Right. That is sort of a unionization to just help workers. But the antitrust thing shows like the implications of having a corporate behemoth that has an outsized political power. We see it in the context of taxation. We see it in the context of their ability to just sort of like, dangle cities around by their nose or whatever it is. But is it also like an inevitability? Because I actually believe when Amazon says if it wasn't us, it would be someone else, that is an indictment of maybe our system, right? Like, I mean,
yes.
Is there a problem with capitalism, period, full stop? I mean, maybe that's it depends on your ideological position, but it seems like they're right. If it wasn't Amazon, it would be somebody, I don't know, the Nile or whatever, like some other entity.
Yes. Though again, I would say I believe in structural forces. I also believe in personal agency and kind of corporate agency and corporate responsibility. And I do believe that there are certain ways that Amazon has grown and behaved that might have been different if it were a company not led by Jeff Bezos and not led by a certain kind of ethic that came sort of from him and kind of characterized this one company. But absolutely, we as a country, let this happen, and it really has so much to do with our just this complete shift in our approach to monopoly. And we had a big problem with monopoly in this country in around the turn of the 20th century, and we took it on, and for decades we recognized this problem and we tried to push back on it. And that fell away in the last few decades, past few decades, where we have adopted what's known as the sort of consumer welfare approach to monopoly, where, hey, as long as the prices stay low for us to buy our stuff, nice word for it, online, what's the problem? If the prices are low, it's fine for the consumer. There's nothing to worry about. And that has been the overriding approach to monopoly and antitrust. And people, minds, much people much smarter than me on economics have explained in recent years, all the reasons why this is flawed and why this is inadequate, and why there's other ways that we should be thinking about corporate power and dominance, and just the distorting effects of that kind of dominance. And so very belatedly now we're revisiting this, and that's what's at stake now in Washington.
So we've reached this point as Amazon has kind of, it's hard to imagine them getting any bigger, but they could. And I think there's kind of an impasse for at least Democrats who are now in power in Washington, right? Because they have traditionally been cozy with big tech, but now you have someone like Joe Biden speaking out about the Bessemer strike and speaking out in favor of the unionization, or not strike, I should say, unionization efforts down in Alabama. So what is the path forward there? Because I think this is kind of a reckoning for Democrats and their relationship with these tech behemoths and perhaps pursuing some antitrust action.
It's absolutely, you nailed it. It's an absolutely a reckoning within the Democratic Party. I mean, it was the Democratic Party has been incredibly tight with big tech for these last 2 decades. That has been where that's been the affinity, really. In terms of just their political leanings, their giving, and the revolving door. I mean, just so many people going from the Obama administration into big tech, including Jay Carney, who's the head of the whole PR government influence, government lobbying team at Amazon, and so now the question is, and then even more broadly, of course, that you have the fact that Amazon's is universal, but its strongest demographic really is as consumers is the middle class, upper middle class, highly educated urban consumer in big metro areas. That's the Amazon bread and butter. That's why those boxes are piled up outside New York apartment buildings and in the lobbies. And Amazon was the amazing poll just a couple years ago, the most trusted institution in the entire country among Democrats, more than the press, more than higher education, more than unions, more than government. So there's a deep affinity between big tech and Democrats, both at the elite level and just generally speaking. And so now you have people like Elizabeth Warren, Lena Khan, people on the left who recognize how out of whack things have gotten and are very incisive about what has to be done about it. And it's going to be a fight really within Democrats. Is the Biden administration willing to take a different path than the Obama administration did? The Obama administration presided over 8 years of massive galloping growth by the giants. And it's going to be really interesting to see if there's a rift there and a new approach.
In fact, there was just a big release of documents about the Obama administration's handling of Google,
exactly.
We will get into on this program later. And I want to reiterate just sort of what I think is amazing about your book is that we have talked on this program many times about this sort of the change in the perspective on antitrust around that happened with Robert Bork and Ronald Reagan in the early 80s, and the shift to consumer welfare as opposed to a sort of a broader perspective on it. And so if people want to understand what the implications are of a monopoly like this, and its knock-on impacts that are really it's amazing how far down the road it goes, what's downstream from this type of monopoly. One of those things I just want to touch on before you go is that concept of what it has done to mobility for people when they move, like the decision to go from a Boston to a Dayton, or from pick a city, I guess, and to another is so dramatic relative to what it was even 30 years ago. How does that play out? Like, where else do we see the implications of that?
No, it's a real problem. This lack of mobility, and it goes in both directions. You're much less likely now to make a move from a place that's struggling to a place of greater opportunity than you used to be. That those moves are happening much less often, even though you think people would want to go to the opportunity, go to the jobs. But as the gaps have gotten so much bigger, it's so hard to come in at the lower rung of a city like a San Francisco or Seattle from a struggling place, because where would you even begin? You're going to be starting at some low wage job in one of these cities, and you simply won't be able to afford it. There's the housing affordability problem there has gotten so extreme that you don't even know where you'd latch on in a place like that, even if there's in theory more opportunity. The fact is the low wage jobs there are still low wage, and it's just really hard to afford life there. On top of that, you also have the sort of the breakdown of the family makes that kind of move much harder too. You're back in the day, the Jodes could move from Oklahoma to California because you have Ma Jode and Tom Jode, and if Tom's working in the picking fruit in California, you have Ma Jode to take care of the kids. Now if you're a single mom in Appalachian, Ohio, you're relying on your mom or your sisters to take care of your kids while you're working. Maybe it's going to be really hard for you to pick up with your kids and just move to Northern Virginia. Who's going to take care of the kids while you work? It's just that's tougher. Then going the other way, it's much tougher more conceivable for someone, a highly educated person, to take if you see some cool job in Buffalo that seems interesting, or in Rochester or wherever it might be. Say you're in biotech and there's some cool biotech thing in Rochester, you're much less likely to make that move than you used to be, because you're much less likely to spend your whole career in a given place. You want to have a whole bunch of companies in your field in the same place. You want the cluster as for security, and so you're much more likely to stay in Boston, because that's where you have a whole bunch of those jobs around. If you also likely have a professional partner, who's like you, a professional, well-educated professional. He or she is going to needs a good job too, and they're going to ask, well, what am I going to do in Buffalo? It's the clustering just is constantly sort of self-reinforcing in that way. And then on top of the fact, there is the tendency of well-educated professionals, upper income people, to want to live amongst each other. That's been shown that high earning people are much less likely to live in sort of mixed income neighborhoods. They seem to be taking comfort from sort of living amongst their own in certain neighborhoods and suburbs and what have you. So all of that, just you have this constant self-reinforcement where there's very little mobility between the two kinds of places.
It is a massive problem, and I don't even know how we begin to address it beyond either some type of wholesale change in our system, or these mitigating suggestions that you had. But Alec MacGillis, it's a fascinating book. We will put a link to Fulfillment: Winning and Losing in One-Click America on majority.fm. Thanks so much for your time.
Right. Thanks so much to both of you.
Thanks so much.
All right, folks, going to take a quick break, then we'll come back, wrap it up. Just got a question on the IM that just popped up that I saw that we should address. Wyoming Ryan says, Sam, I own a small business. Retail sales tax is money I never owned. How does not charging sales tax help a retail business? It's money I take and hand right over. Apparently, Wyoming Ryan didn't have any competitors, because if he did, if his competitors weren't charging sales tax and Ryan was, me as a consumer will say, well, Ryan's prices are 8% higher than Kevin's down the street. I'm going to go to Wyoming Kevin's retail business. I mean, that's how the sales tax thing was. Like, I go to Amazon, it's cheaper than it is if I buy it down the street. I'll do that. And so that was the arbitrage they were playing with sales tax. But it is a fascinating book. I don't know the answer. If it's not, this is just maybe a problem with capitalism, or if there's something that we could have done, or maybe it's too far.
Something we can do to stymie it now. I mean, it may return and regenerate in the way railroad monopolies do. Now it's tech monopolies, but there are temporary stopgaps, I would say. Right. And if it is, I don't know, you can mitigate, but I don't know if you can go backwards in time. The problem may be so big
that we have let the cat out of the bag and it's running around and it turned into a monster.
Spraying everywhere.
That's not exactly the
Yikes.
metaphor I wanted. All right, folks. See you tomorrow. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought like that had that sense like there would be music come in, and then I realized no, it doesn't.
Happens every day.
This is breaking from Ryan Grimm right now. Chuck Schumer is telling labor leaders that a PRO Act gets a floor vote if they can find 50 co-sponsors. They're now at 45. So the question's going to be, and this is one of those things like where
I'm in favor of forcing the vote here because we can now then see. Wow, 45.
Well, you can't force the vote. He's saying we're not going to do it until we get those 5 other co-sponsors. But the question is, how do you find out who those 5 are? Well, that's pretty easy. I mean, frankly, somebody, maybe it's going to be the Intercept. I don't know. This happened during the privatization push in 2005. George Bush was pushing to privatize Social Security. Talking Points memo, Josh Marshall over there, basically started a whip count. And he started asking his readers, go and call your local representative, find out what their position is on privatizing Social Security. And they developed a whip count. And so they had an ongoing list, and they found out who was for it. And of course, just the actual process of doing that puts pressure on people. Right. And certainly, this is, if Schumer's telling Ryan Grimm that's what Schumer wants.
Yes.
Schumer wants us, you,
the left. I mean, he knows who he's speaking to.
Pro-union folk, go out. Like Schumer's like, I can't be leader and tell you who the 5 are, but there's 5. How hard could it be to figure it out? You go out, you find those people, and you put them on the record, and you make them be public that they are going to be, that they are not supporting this. And then, then we have the question of the filibuster. But the bottom line is, there is going to be a time, and it's going to happen soon. I can't tell you when. I don't have any inside information. But it's either going to be HR 1 or S1. I mean, I should say S1. It's now been introduced. There's going to be a time where there's going to be a reckoning on this filibuster. And once the filibuster is gone, I mean, this is what's actually good about the sequencing here. If I go on the record today as being for the PRO Act, I am more inclined to do it now if I think I've got it, and I'm somewhat reluctant, let's say. I'm more inclined to do it now if the filibuster is there. If I'm somewhat disinclined to do it, I'm more inclined to do it when the filibuster is there because I don't have to take necessarily that vote or in a meaningful.
We have names, by the way.
Oh, we do?
Yeah, that Brendan just sent. Angus King, Sinema, Mark Kelly, Manchin.
And Mark Warner.
Mark Warner. The secret villain of all of this. He just does not get enough heat.
It's true.
And it's obvious. Like, that makes a ton of sense.
If I had to guess, if I had to guess, I would have said those. I would have forgotten about any.
I don't think I would have said Mark Kelly. I probably would have said somebody else.
I anticipated Mark Kelly actually being more to the right than where he's been so far.
That's why I guess maybe he lulled me to sleep.
But we will see. There's got to be, I think Warner I could see subject to pressure, and Manchin also subject to pressure. Arizona, I don't know what the dynamic is there, but there may be very well a dynamic. That's why we see that. But there it is. So anyhow, we will head into the fun half today. 646-257-3920 is the number. People are very excited about our cult-like dressing.
Yeah, that's...
It's not like people are going to forget about it. I mean,
we either got to make it a thing, or maybe we don't have to make it a thing.
Well, I don't think we need to make it a thing at all. That's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to dissuade the thing from happening. It keeps happening.
I was about to say it has to be. We either have to make it a thing, or just.
I think we have to
never do it again.
I think we have to make a commitment to never do this again. I mean,
I know, but the commitment is one-sided. It's just on me, and I just have to make sure.
I only have 5 shirts. I can't it's either that or it's like a.
This is like the last of the winter again. This is the last of the winter selection, and it was in the 50s today. I didn't want to wear a blouse.
This is the problem. is that when we moved to Zoom, my whole plaid wardrobe became inoperative because it mores on the video screen. That's basically what's the root of this. So I had to wear only my solids. And so I only have
5 solids.
Yeah. Yeah. I just bought another gray one. So
A gray solid button down?
yeah. Folks, just a reminder, this show relies on your support. You can become a member at jointhemajorityreport.com. Jointhemajorityreport.com. It is your membership that makes this show possible. Tough times for some people, and some folks, frankly, just had enough for politics after Donald Trump. They needed a break. If you are not one of those people, if you're one of those people who are staying engaged, and you're one of those people who are not haven't lost a job, or you're doing okay at this time, and you like the show, now is a great time to support it. JoinTheMajorityReport.com. Also, don't forget JustCoffee.coop, fair trade coffee, tea, or chocolate. Use the coupon code MAJORITY, get 10% off. And AM Quickie. So there you go. Don't forget, check out Nomi's show today. The No McKee Show. You can find it on YouTube.com or Twitch.tv, _No McKee Show. Also, my sister just texted me, we have new masks in the in our merch at MajorityReportRadioStore.com. MajorityReportRadioStore.com. Oh, wait, is that what it is? No, it's not. It's store.MajorityReportRadio. What? What is our thing there?
Shop at MajorityReportRadio.com or shop.MajorityReportRadio.com.
Shop.MajorityReportRadio.com. Oh, there's the new masks. And one is the behind the head type. That's the ear loop. It's behind the head type. Remember, everything union, American union, and American made. So, ooh, look at that. I didn't know that black beanie came in there. That's pretty good. I like that one. That's pretty good.
Very nice.
There you go. So check it out. Also, Matt, what's happening on the Matt Leckian media universe?
Yeah, Thursday night on Left Reckoning at 8, we have Shama Sawant to talk about the recall effort she's fighting up in Seattle, and Wozni Lambre is going to hang out, talk about basketball. So a little bit less sports. So if you like basketball, check out Left Reckoning at 8 Eastern.
Nice.
Dude, you sounded great in that right there.
Yeah.
Crystal clear.
Look at that.
Crystal clear. Feels like you're in the room. The thing that we talked about with Alec MacGillis today is directly tied to Shama Sawant's the attacks on Shama Sawant, right? I mean, like they don't want to pay extra taxes there.
Yeah.
I mean, that is the 1-to-1. All right, folks. See you in the fun half.
Tout
We are back. Sam Seder, Emma Vigeland on the Majority Report.
I learned my lesson and had my almonds, my new snack of choice, ran out of the cashews. I had them at the start of the song and didn't try to wolf them down towards the end.
Yeah, you can easily choke on something like that.
Just wanted to tell the audience, give them a little.
DCN Near Hat. DCN Ear Hat or DC Near Hat says, Sam, other than being latched to the slow death practicality of Democratic establishment incrementalism, aka slide rightward, I'd say you are in my cohort. A year older, familiar with the rural mindset. I gotta ask, Mrs. Cotter was way too cute for Gabe Kaplan. Agree? Yeah, but he was funny and turns out to be a professional poker player. So maybe that's what, but yes, I would say, yeah. I mean, the last sitcom acting job I had, I was in the pilot. It's a long story. It's a long story, actually. But long and short of it is I was in the pilot of According to Jim. And Courtney Thorne-Smith was Jim Belushi's wife.
Ah.
And that.
I don't know who she is. I obviously know Jim Belushi.
She.
Courtney Thorne-Smith?
Yeah. Yeah, she was in Ally McBeal. And I think Melrose Place or something like that.
It's Thorne-Smith.
What did I say?
Born.
No, I said Thorne-Smith.
Oh, okay.
Thorne.
Well, I'm looking at a picture of her now, and that's hilarious.
Yeah.
It's a very, very George Costanza, King of Queens vibe. Just like
it was even worse. It was even worse. It was just like I don't even want to tell you what they called, what the writers apparently called the scene when they were like they were actually like hugging. It was not. It was whoosh. It was bad. Let's go to the let's see. Taco Cat. Sam, you uneffable turnip. That's not the way that they said. You look somebody shaved a wombat and put it in a shirt. Love the show, and I'm wondering if you've ever read John Ronson. Yeah, didn't he write the...
That was rude, though.
We had Ronson on the list, didn't he? Did he do like the Public Shame book? What was that book?
Yeah, he did like shamed. Men Who Stare at Goats, So You've Been Publicly Shamed, Them.
And he also like there wasn't a story about how he went with like
Alex Jones to Bohemian Grove. Yeah, that's in Them.
Yeah.
I've been to Bohemian Grove.
Really?
Yeah.
You have?
Well, I went there because my aunt got remarried to a guy who, and they had their reception.
Really?
Yeah.
Was it for like the Bohemian Grove activities, or you were just on the premises?
On the premises. So
this guy had access to the premises.
He's still in my family. I mean, I don't think it's like.
Can you say this on the air? Do we need to cut your mic?
No, I mean, I don't care. I remember being told, like, presidents come here. I was, like, 13. And I just remember they're big, big trees. It's, like, in the Redwoods, I think. Right?
I have no idea.
Anyway.
Yeah.
They live, like, in Santa Rosa area. And it was... So... I don't know. But
Emer said that he would bring me into Bohemian Grove like the first year I started here, and I never got a follow-up on that. But
we'll look into that.
Yeah.
So Ronson has some interesting opinions on cancel culture and wokeism that thread the needle more adeptly and accurately than I think the prevailing opinion on the right or the left, including Majority Report. All right, well, we'll see about that. Maybe we'll finally have him on. I feel like I had some contact with him at one point. I can't remember what it was around, but we'll check into it. Teacher Lauren. Hey, Sam, today is my mom's birthday, and she's getting her second Moderna dose this weekend. Can we get a shofar from Miriam? Yes, we can. Congratulations. Glad Miriam is doing well. Solo Vey, glad you two are matching again. Show borderline unwatchable when you're not. Too much distractions on screen. Mutts butts. On gun laws, the more things don't change, the more they stay the same. Sam Emma, when we look at the demise of the working class and or the flyover country, we shouldn't be so bewildered why those same people vote against their own interests when past political party allies voted against those same people's best interests. Ignorance is not bliss, and Amazon is not an equatorial river.
Agreed.
Josh from Tucson. Pretty sure Emma's just trying to take over Sam's position now. Soon she'll be the ruler of the commissary.
I'm hosting the show all week next week, so...
Coincidence?
I think not.
Blue Roots Radio. What's with the captions? What is with the captions? What does that mean?
If we have captions, they're automated because nobody's typing this stuff up.
We're live. We don't.
I thought I was supposed to be typing every word of every. I was transcribing this live.
Yeah, we didn't play that. Sidney.
I've been busy.
Wait, did Sidney Powell? Is there audio of Sidney Powell yesterday, or
No, it was her lawyers presenting in court. It's a brief. We can show the brief if people want to read it.
Well, it's fascinating. Sidney Powell made the argument that no one would reasonably believe anything she was saying in terms of her Dominion claims. That is her defense. You twist yourself into pretzels when you're defending yourself against a suit like that. But that's, it's basically like pleading insanity, and not just insanity. This is a civil case. You obviously can't plead that, but it's like it's functional equivalent. Like, not only am I pleading insanity, I'm pleading that I'm so obviously out of my mind that no one would have ever taken it seriously in the first place.
Yeah, but there were like court documents that she filed. I mean, that's what's crazy about this, that you can't really claim that if you were wasting the court system's time with your nonsense.
I mean, I was just doing it for effect. It was part of my routine.
Right. I just think like the documentation in the court filings might undercut the point that she never thought, or that there was never a prospect of being taken seriously.
Sashab. I can imagine Michael doing an impression of Sam as Rain Man, talking about his shirt rotation. Monday is light blue day. On Wednesday, we do laundry. Yeah, it's probably true. Rob from MLA. Rob from LA. AMR. Can I get a show for my good friend Greg? Today is his birthday, and he's the 1-year anniversary of his passing. He would have been 39. I also want you to let your audience... Well, yeah, let me give you that. Sorry about your loss, Rob. I also want to let your audience know about the redistricting process that's begun in a number of states. And if people want to track what's happening, they should go to redistrictinglls.edu. The site is managed by law professor Justin Levitt, who's an expert on process and might be a good future guest to consider. Thank you for everything you do. Left is best. Love you, Greg. Yeah, I'm sorry about your loss, and I will check out this redistricting site. The crass rebuttal. If the Democrats nuke the filibuster and actually get something done for the American people, they won't have to worry about the Republicans taking power back in the Senate. I think that's their best route to maintaining power in the Senate. I don't know about that, but I think I tend to agree. Majority Report wardrobe coordinator. Hey guys, thanks for taking the fall for me, but the outfit mix-up was my fault. When I went to the closet to pick out your attire, Steven Crowder was in there for some reason, and he wouldn't stop bothering me. I was distracted, and I picked out the same color clothes again. Again, thanks for rolling with it. Please don't fire me. Dutch boy. Hey Sam, do you think that it would work to have
closet? That's good.
Yes, that was well done. To have universal voting where everyone receives a ballot and it's required that you return it if there is ever, and there won't be, but for argument's sake, multiple ballots returned for the same person, or if someone doesn't receive it, if it was stolen, it would be easy to investigate that specific instance. I don't know about mandatory voting. I don't know. Maybe if the process was a little bit... if it was a little bit, sort of easier. But the problem is, like, not everybody has an address. I'm
not really in favor of mandatory voting just because, I think people have the right to protest the electoral system.
Well, you could mail back. I mean, you should be able to mail back the ballot blank.
Right. Okay. But I don't know. I think, you universally register people. That should be the goal, and then go from there.
Yeah, fair enough. Let me get on the phone here, and bear with me, folks.
You're gonna take a call like Larry King did in the middle of Dave Rubin's interview.
I was gonna get on this phone system.
I know,
Yeah,
but
I know what you're saying.
for the first part, I was like, I gotta take a call or whatever.
Folks, if you'll just excuse me, I'm just gonna take this call. I've done that. This is a good segment by Mehdi Hassan. And was this on his Peacock show or his MSN?
Peacock Choice show.
This show plays at 8 p.m., if I'm not mistaken, on Peacock. Here he is. He's got Cedric Richmond. Richmond is now former congressman. Now, what is his position in the White House, in the administration?
Senior White House advisor?
Is that right?
I believe it's something like that. White House Cedric.
Okay, well, let's, here is Mehdi.
Oh, sorry, Director of the Office of Public Engagement.
I'm not even.
Senior Advisor to the President.
And here he is being questioned, and this is something that came up when AOC was on the program. The HEROES Act had just passed, and this is something that we had talked about. That was, and this was in the HEROES Act, right? This was passed June or July of 2020 by the Democrats. It was a $3 trillion plus bill. Never obviously saw the light of day in the Senate, but it had this COBRA subsidy, which is good if you're receiving the subsidy. If you're on the, if you've been laid off your job, you get COBRA for free.
It extends your insurance after you've lost your job.
That's what COBRA normally does, but now you would get it for free because the government is actually paying the insurance company. Incidentally, this is the most expensive insurance product that exists, or type of insurance product that exists. And Mehdi Hassan asks Richmond the exact right question.
And there are a lot of good things in legislation, but also some questionable things. I want to talk about one of those. Today's the 11th anniversary of the Affordable Care Act. As you say, the rescue plan expands subsidies for ACA plans, making premiums much cheaper for many families. That's a good thing. But it could also spend an estimated $35 billion fully covering COBRA for around 2 million unemployed people for just 6 months. How is that a good use of that money? $35 billion subsidizing insurance companies for 6 months. Wouldn't that money be better invested towards building universal health care in this country?
Well, clearly you have health insurance right now. But the question is, you ought to pose that to people who have lost their job through no fault of their own, that has lost their health insurance and they need a bridge so that they stay with insurance, so that they can get that checkup and detect cancer early. It's very easy for people to make judgment calls when they're not in other people's shoes, and I won't do that. I won't put a price on lives. I won't put a price on...
Hold on.
Hold on. Let me finish.
Hold on, with respect.
Hold on, wait.
Okay.
No, but I'm not going to put a price tag on a woman finding out that she has early stages of breast cancer so that we can beat it. I mean, look, did we rise to the moment? Yes. Did we spend $1.9 trillion? We did. You know why? Because there was $1.9 trillion worth of problems in this country that we were trying to fix.
Yes. So, with respect, I just need to push back a little bit. I'm in favor of you spending $1.9 trillion. I'd have gone higher. I'm very happy that you're spending lots of money. And as for the money on healthcare, it's not that I don't want you to spend $35 billion on healthcare. I'm in favor of universal healthcare. And when you say there's no price tag on healthcare, the problem is the president, Joe Biden, told us there is. He says we can't afford Medicare for all. I'm saying if you can afford $35 billion to give to COBRA, which is a very inefficient, overpriced way of giving people healthcare, why not spend that money on a universal healthcare system that helps everyone, not just insurance companies?
Well, remember, this is a response to a pandemic. If we didn't have COVID-19, you wouldn't see us doing that COBRA appropriation. So remember, we're probably saying close to the same thing, but remember, this is in response to people losing their jobs through no fault of their own. And if you don't have COVID-19 out there, people are not losing their jobs in record numbers through no fault of their own.
Through no fault of their own. I mean, again, it's just regurgitating that ridiculous, like, 80s Biden talking point about people losing their jobs and it being, for some reason, their fault. But in any time, that may not be the case, or if they're not employed. But that was just so well done by Mehdi Hasan. The thing that Cedric Richmond isn't saying there is that Cobra enriches health insurance companies, healthcare providers. That's why we're doling out all this money, because we're terrified if we do the cheaper, more efficient option, we crack the door open on Medicare for all, and then all
I think that's
hell's
the
gonna
second. I think
break
that's the
loose.
part. Like, I mean, I think like they're happy to give the subsidies to the health insurance, but it doesn't. I mean, look, the health insurance companies, they don't make any more than they would during normal times of Cobra, right? I mean, although you could argue that people wouldn't be able to afford it. What happens with Cobra is this. I'm a company. I lay somebody off. That person continues, and that person has health insurance on my company. That person continues to pay whatever portion of the health insurance they had paid before. Then it goes up because they have to pay even greater portion of that health insurance, and I, as the employer, still pay. So now the government comes in and pays all of it. It's a very expensive product, and the problem, like the reason why Richmond had such a lame answer is because there's no good answer. It would have been just as easy to say, we're going to do a temporary expansion of Medicare. We got the apparatus set up. You file your unemployment insurance claim. All you need to do is show that your unemployment insurance claim is valid. Boom, that gets you Medicare for a certain period of time. Same, like the infrastructure is there to do Medicare. We have people on Medicare who are not necessarily 65. You could expand Medicaid. You could say you get a Medicaid voucher, and the expansion of Medicaid, you do that. It's trickier in the States because it's not federally run, but you could do it that way. So Mehdi did a good job. It's just, I think he must have been surprised that if I had asked that question and I got that response, I would have been a little thrown off, because I would have been like, whoa, are you really pretending like I didn't ask you that question? Are you really pretending like I'm attacking you for providing health insurance as opposed to for the way that you provide health insurance? I would have been surprised.
Well,
because that takes a lot of chutzpah to pretend like that's almost
Cedric
like,
Richmond. I mean, but he used the standard talking points that he would use for a right-wing outlet or a centrist outlet talking about you're spending way too much money. That's what you get from regular media. But Mehdi is so good, and he goes, wait, no, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm happy that you're spending money. And Richmond was just flummoxed. He had no idea what to say, because the common sense solution is not the conversation that the rest of the media is having.
Right. That's absolutely right. And I would have been surprised, just because I would have been like, wait. Did you not know whose show you were coming on? But I mean, that's I wonder how many more times they're going to send people to him now.
Well,
like,
I hope
say,
and pray for more,
right.
Because again, look, we just have to. He's our partner on Peacock, and regardless of that, it's just so refreshing to hear those kinds of questions being asked and followed up on and said with such clarity. So, great job, Mehdi.
Militant Apathy says, I'm still trying to understand your and Emma's point about how bringing up the racist history of the filibuster is counterproductive.
No, that's not our point.
That was not the point. I think the point is that from McConnell's perspective, to make it about a false claim of racism is the best that he can come up with, right? Like, because it was once you start taking into like, because people don't care about procedure, but if he can get his people to feel like now they're trying to say the filibuster is racist, like what's not racist? It's one of those type of things. I don't think
all their work is in council culture narratives. That's really all they got going now, and that puts this in that.
Exactly.
Right.
I mean,
what we were just saying, I think, was that was his most effective, like, for his purposes, tactic against the filibuster yet in recent weeks.
I don't think. I mean, I don't think that. I think the fact is that we know the racist nature of the filibuster, but I feel like all of those people who are going to be swayed by that, they've been swayed by it. I think.
I agree. I don't think it's a winning issue for him altogether.
Oh no! I mean, on our side, like I think that I just don't think that there is the audience for talking about getting rid of the filibuster is really just not that large.
It's wonderful. I mean, it serves our purposes, honestly.
The audience is really just like a couple of senators.
It's why Warren's attack on Bernie about that in the primary fell so flat, too.
I just think that people just aren't.
No one cares.
No one cares.
Yeah.
I mean,
They what? Are you going to improve my life? That's about it.
Yeah, I just think process issues. I agree. Calling from a 951 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hello, is this Sam?
Yes, it is. Who's this?
Hi, this is Mike Lindell from My Pillow. I had the proof against Dominion's voting machines, and now they're after me. They're guilty of horrible crimes, I tell you. I had the proof on this data rod. Dominion's the biggest
Okay, I can't let you say that on air because of our pending legal action, Mr. Lindell.
Do you have the document?
Let me just make it absolutely clear that there was no, I don't know.
We do not endorse these statements by Mike Lindell.
Absolutely not.
This is read from a teleprompter directly from our lawyers, even though this is on a news program.
And use coupon code MAJORITY at mypillow.com. That would actually be great if everybody went there and just kept putting majority report in there, and eventually they'd come to us.
Mike, you still there?
No, I hung up on him.
Oh.
I wasn't going to let him tear the show down by getting a lawsuit.
Well, he keeps going on right-wing media because they think they can keep him on topic. Maybe we could.
Yeah, let's play this clip. Here, wait a second.
Oh, what a great...
good lead-in. Which one's the best one? Is it number 6, you think?
They're both good. We could probably hit both.
All right, let's play number 5. Here is Mike Lindell. He is on, this is the best part. He's on this guy, Eric McTax's show. Where is Eric McTax's show on now?
I don't know. I think he's independent.
So he can't even get on.
Well, this is the best part about this.
Or OAN?
He doesn't, here he is. Here's Mike Lindell, now worried about what he says on air, and he's on this show, Mike McTax's. I've never even heard of it.
McTax's?
Metaxes.
Well, it's just...
I want to say one thing there. Here's things that don't make sense, everybody. Let's just talk about Fox. You're already sued. It's too late to close the gate. The cows are out of the barn. Why can't people go on there and say their free speech then? You're already sued, Fox. What do you have? What are you going to get double sued? What's the matter with you? And I will say that straight out. It makes me, I'm so, what are they in on? I don't get it. Is it a fake lawsuit?
I love the fact that he's adopted Trump's gesticulation now. Mm-hmm. Have you noticed that?
So Fox is in on their own lawsuit?
He's just not having it. I mean, he's just like, I wonder if Eric McTaxes is going to be part of this new thing that
is taxes.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a liberal conspiracy. Yeah.
I can't tell if it's Meta.
Oh, he got the finger. That's what it is. Oh, you're right. With the hands.
Oh yeah. Look at that.
Look at that. And
here is and then just coincidentally after he's crapped all over Fox, Mike Lindell brings up this.
So when this launches, millions are going to come over. And what I'm doing is when the influencers come over, they will now have a platform where all the people down here follow them instantly. That if someone joins prank, it's reverse engineered. They don't have to earn their followers. So someone such as yourself, Eric, you'll have millions right away because they need to see your show. They need to hear the word. They need to hear free speech. Well, when that happens now, what I'm going to do to my influence, I'm going to say, as soon as you get kicked off of YouTube, you're getting a bonus. Because why? Because then you're actually speaking out free speech and you're not worrying about what Mr. Alphabet and Mr. Google say about us, or Suckabuck or Dorky and all these people that try and control us here and that are all going to prison. They're all going to prison. I'm telling you, by the time this is done.
What's done?
Mr. Alphabet and Mr. Google are going to prison. Learn the executives' names first, my guy.
Well, I think he.
I mean, Suckerbuck, he's teaching me some names, actually.
Dorky is good too.
Yeah.
He gets more unhinged every single day.
I was going to say, I hope that Mr. Lindell has family around him that can maybe step in and deal with whatever's going on there. But he's getting more and more riled up. What happened to the documentary? How many people? He's got a huge list of people going to jail.
Yeah. I like the other aspect too, where he says, "Speak free speech." Like
Yep.
free speech, I guess, is just, everything about the election being stolen. That's how you categorize.
Yeah, and I'm not a speech lawyer, but like the whole thing about, well, you've been sued, so you might as well just say whatever. I don't think that's how like libel works.
You're supposed to do the opposite so that more litigation can't pile up, more evidence can't pile up.
Right. Yeah.
That's why Fox isn't having you on.
Well,
it's not a nothing left to lose situation. There could be more.
The standard in this country, anyways, is when you knowingly report something that is false. When you know that what you're saying is not true. It's hard to prove. But if you go out and do it after everybody else has basically dropped the claims, it makes it a little bit harder. But he seems to be very energized about this new social media platform. And I will also say this, credit where credit's due. We just watched, what was it? Almost 120 seconds of that, and there was no coupon code anywhere on the screen.
Not even a pillow to hug.
So credit where credit's due. That's pretty good. Calling from a 702 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hey, Sam. It's Bro Flamingo from Las Vegas.
Bro Flamingo from Las Vegas. How you doing, man?
I'm doing pretty good. Feeling real good because, DSA, we got it done over here. And, the DNC, crapped their pants. So, we're trying to raise money to replenish our coffers. Bernie, you might be stepping in, I think, soon.
Yeah.
So I'm really happy.
Nice.
And I really liked the interview you guys had today. I think it touched upon a lot of things that's really important. And I think it also has a kind of a through line into some of the mass shootings because I just think that, this has been a breakdown of, I think just over time, there's been a breakdown in the social cohesion, and I think our system of work and these things and these kind of just terrible jobs that we go through, there's been like a mental breakdown on the worker. And, without, multiracial labor coalition and, unionization or whatever, we're going to get, society's going to keep producing these kind of shooters and, these kind of bad outcomes. And I also think that, on one hand, I think that's one element too, but also there's another element where, there's got to have to be a reckoning. And I really want your guys' opinion on this. There's got to be a reckoning on look, in terms of the Atlanta shooter, I'm not sure about the Boulder, Colorado shooter, but I know in the Atlanta shooter, there's a lot of white supremacy going on, and there's got to be punishment on the table for it. And you saw that police chief, he was out there, pushing white supremacist daycare. Oh, he had a bad day. If we're gonna, really get serious about this, I think the Democrats, at least on some level, really have to start cracking down on these white supremacists, but also a lot of these psychopathic capitalists like Jeff Bezos, whatever. And I know the antitrust is coming in, but even I don't trust Joe Biden because you guys even brought this up. The Obama administration, they went kind of soft on Google with the antitrust stuff.
More than soft.
More than, exactly. So, and don't get me wrong, look, it's a brand new day, right? But, it's hard to teach a really old dog new tricks. So, but maybe we could apply pressure. But I would love to get your guys' thoughts on this. And one quick thing before I jump, I just really think for the left, and, I'm glad what's going on with Western Alabama, whatever, all these things are inextricably linked. And if we're going to really have a strong multiracial labor coalition, you got to get tough on white supremacists. You know, playtime is over. Okay, you can't put these guys in daycare anymore. These guys have been engaging in unreality and psychopathic misogyny, by the way, for a very long time. Left is best. You guys take care. Love you all.
Thanks, Bro Flamingo from
Bro
Las
Flamingo.
Vegas. There is there's a lot there, but first off, yes, we need to strengthen unions in this country. What's happening in Bessemer could be really important, particularly if it is something that, and I think it's going to inspire unionization drives across the country. It's going to show that you can unionize against Amazon, and that's going to be really helpful. The antitrust thing, it's similar situation, incomplete. There is definitely, if you look at the staffing that's going on, there is definitely reasons to be optimistic, but not exuberant. And we need to see what happens. I mean, really, there's sort of I don't know. I shouldn't say this because I don't know this well enough, but it really should be a binary step in terms of antitrust. You either use the consumer welfare standard or you use the more expansive standard, which includes all of these knock-on issues, which have to do with like responsibility to the community, responsibility to civil society. And I don't even just like you're asking, it is that these corporations, you don't want them to get so powerful. You don't want them to have outsized political power. You don't want them to leave communities bereft. You don't want them to silence competition, et cetera, et cetera. But I also do think that, like, you look at something like this, and it is, in my mind, the best argument for why you need to fundamentally change the system, and you cannot mitigate, these impacts, because I think the argument would be like, well, all right, let's say even if you were to switch back to the old antitrust regime and you were able to disassemble this stuff and build up these communities again and et cetera, over the course of 20 or 30 years, what's to stop, Robert Bork's grandkid from doing this all over again in 40 years? So, that's the biggest argument I think you could have for, like, just fundamentally we need to sort of take more of a sledgehammer to it than a, well, I don't want to say scalpel, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, a sanding device.
I mean, it's really the difference between a hatchet and a scalpel.
Why didn't you want to say scalpel?
Because it didn't go with a sledgehammer.
There you go.
Calling from a 505 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hello, this is Sexy Joe from New Mexico.
Oh,
and,
Sexy Joe.
Sam,
Wow,
my
you're
first
confident.
time talking to you.
Oh, Sexy Joe. Well, it's great to talk to you.
Yeah, thanks. I've called twice, but it was on Thursdays, I guess. And I wish Naomi Key was here today, but I wanted to do a shout out to her and the show she did a month ago with Antoinette Cedillo Lopez, who is running for New Mexico's 1st District to fill Deb Haaland's seat.
Oh, okay.
And yeah, the election date has been set to June 1st. That just was announced like a week ago.
All right.
So Antoinette Cedillo Lopez is the clear progressive choice. She's far and away the most progressive. She's actually more progressive than Deb Haaland. And she was endorsed by Justice Democrats when she ran in 2018. She has not been endorsed by the Justice Democrats yet in this run, so I'm hoping they do that, but we'll see. But hopefully if all the progressives come out and unite, she obviously needs volunteers, small donations.
Does she have a website yet?
Yes, she has a great website. She has it's, let's see. Well, if you just look up Antoinette Cedillo Lopez for New Mexico. She also just needs more Twitter followers. She doesn't get nearly enough love on Twitter, and her handle on Twitter is ASL for Justice for All, and it's the number 4 in both of those 4s, ASL for Justice for All. So yeah, people
Antoinette Cedillo Lopez.
Yep, or
I just
ASL. She's got that.
No, I know. I just
convenient,
wanted to say her
three-letter
name
acronym.
clearly. Yeah.
Yes, Antoinette Cedillo Lopez, and she's the only one who's got a strong campaign finance reform position in the race. So that's why I'm strongly in favor of her. So yeah, if everybody follow her on Twitter and support, that'd be great.
Great. All right. Well, that was very sexy, Joe. Thank you very much for the call.
You got it. Appreciate it.
Much appreciated. Calling from a 787 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hello.
Hello?
Yeah, I hope you don't hang up on me. Because I'm the guy that called in on another day about having a small hat.
Okay. All right. I understand. Yeah. No, I remember that. I remember you. Okay. So.
No, yeah, so I'm sorry for doing that. I'm kind of like ashamed of doing that.
No, don't worry.
we were
just joking around.
Yeah,
you have a very large, abnormally large head. That's really your issue. That's not ours.
And it doesn't affect how we feel
I'm
about
sure
you.
all hats are small to you, so that's fine.
Yes, exactly. Okay, so I'm gonna keep on taking the punishment for saying that I have a big head now. But no, I just want to talk about like the situation here in Puerto Rico. I don't know if you know about the thing about state making us a state.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, yeah. I just wanted to ask, like, what do you think that most Puerto Rican wants, or what are your views on us? What should we be? Like, should we be a state, or should we have?
I think you should have. I think Puerto Rico should have the right to be a state if the people vote in favor of that. But I know that in past referendums, there's been like, sort of uneven participation because some people have boycotted and whatnot. So, I don't know. There's a lot of issues there that are difficult for me sitting here to untangle. I think, the to the extent that I can, articulate an opinion on it, I feel like it would be something that we would want to have Puerto Rico have like as much self-determination as possible. Yeah. But I know that the politics of statehood are a little bit wonky or different than we would maybe project onto Puerto Rico, from the outside looking in. But, so I don't know if it's a question of independence from the United States or statehood. I feel like, the idea of a territory seems the worst of all worlds. And so, that's all I would say, that like, I think it's, I would like it from the perspective of maybe it might provide, a better representation for the country, broadly speaking, in the Senate. You know what I mean? But, but
I agree with that.
But that's, I think that's sort of secondary to what the desires of the people who live in Puerto Rico are. I'm not sure I know how to discern that, at least right now.
Yeah, but just, I don't know if you know this, but like the party that won the government here in Puerto Rico, they have advocated for statehood for a long time, but most Puerto Ricans that favor independence and the type of situation we have now, we feel that the party only favors statehoods because they get elected, because half or a little bit more than half of the country is pro-statehood. So what I feel is that the party that favors statehood here in Puerto Rico, they actually just want to like privatize everything. They are really right wing.
Right.
They favor Democrats, but in reality, it's just because Democrats favor more statehood or are self-determination more than Republicans do. So I feel that the moment that we turn into a state, we're gonna turn into a Republican state because the nature of our our interests, which are more corporate and more leaning to privatization, and of course, and we have a really big libertarian views here, like, and I feel it's like a really wide spectrum where we have like libertarians that are socialists, libertarians that are really corporate, libertarians that are just like family, founded on having rich families, and also libertarians that just are in it to survive for survival. They think we're in a perpetual crisis, and I feel that is a really recipe for disaster when it comes to us being a state.
Yeah. Well, I think
we're gonna.
I mean, I think ultimately, I think it's got to be about sovereignty from a perspective of the country. But I'll tell you this: on Nomi's show today, my understanding is I think she's having a debate about Puerto Rican statehood versus independence. So folks, check that out. That'd be a good thing for you to tune in. Just don't bring up the hat stuff, all right, dude?
Yeah, but just to end this, thank you so much. I really appreciate you guys. I really do love hearing you guys. I'm so appreciative of all the work that you guys do. I love everything. I really miss also Michael Brooks' voice. I think he was really essential. And I think you should also kind of keep in mind having those voices that they proclaim being socialist or being really left. I think that's really important in the show.
I promise you, we will.
Okay,
that is,
so just keep that in mind because I also miss Jamie. But
yes, we will. And I tip my hat to you. But we will. It's come up a couple of times. That is the plan. And one of the things that people need to just sort of give us a little bit breath on is the dynamic of the show. I don't know how, I don't know how conscious people are of this. Not only did the production flow, the workflow change dramatically when we went to COVID, but the nature of the show itself has changed, right? It's different. We're different when we're all in studio, and that changes the product that you get. And it also, not just in terms of it puts us in a different mood or there feels like a different dynamic or whatever it is, but it's also somebody's on a microphone and being incidental is, being able to drop in incidentally as opposed to having to be on camera the whole time also creates a different dynamic. And then, you factor in Michael's death and, all of that. It's just going to take us a little time to, sort of get back to, we're operating at 100%. And so all of these factors are, make it a little bit slow in terms of response rate on some of these things. And it's also hard to say, like, okay, I want to build a dynamic with the show, but when we get back into studio, that's going to change the dynamic again. And so we need somebody who's in Brooklyn so that we can maintain this. Do we want somebody who's like always on the show or hanging out, but on Zoom the whole time? That would be weird. I mean, so there's all these different things. And then Zoom itself is got its own sort of like limitations. So people got to bear with us. Adam in Pittsburgh just said, did you really just say I tip my hat to you, to the caller from Puerto Rico? Yes. It was a joke about the hat complaint that he had.
You were like, I was laughing about the hat thing earlier, and you're like, did you do that on purpose to make me laugh?
Oh, yeah. No, I did that on purpose. I mean, I did it to everybody.
Well, I was struggling already.
Oh, no, I did that already to like, yeah.
I think I might have missed the hat thing. I have no idea what he's talking about. Small hat, big head.
Might have been on vacation.
Yeah, no, he called in. He said our beanies in the Majority Report store at shop.majorityreportradio.com are too small.
I think it was a baseball hat, to be fair to him.
Oh, was it the baseball hat?
Yeah.
Which is adjustable?
It's adjustable. He said even when you adjust it, it's too small. I mean, guy's got a big, he's got a big hat. He's got a big head. I'm not saying that like like that's probably because his brain's so big. Calling from a 908 area code.
That's offensive.
No, it's not.
Hey.
No.
Science show.
Oh, is that a?
It's scientific, yeah.
You're calling from a 908 area code. Who's this? Where you calling from?
Hey, this is Devin from New Jersey.
Devin
from
okay? Yeah, I can. Devin, what's on your mind?
From Jersey. Love
Hey,
Jersey. You know what? That's where I'm from.
So oh yeah, we're in New Jersey.
Let's take it easy, everybody.
I'm
all
from
right.
Essex County.
All
How
right.
about you?
Fair enough. Somerset County.
There you go.
So I was going to make an argument that we shouldn't raise the federal minimum wage to $15. It comes from the heart, so I think you'll be open to it. So I agree that there are people that are not making enough money to live, and even $15 isn't enough for those people. And something has to be done to make sure those people are paid enough. But the idea of a blanket minimum wage of $15 across the country, I'm worried about, because from my position, when I was a kid, I'm 25 now. When I was a kid, I got A's all growing up until I turned 13. When I turned 13, my parents got a divorce, and they're still in court today, like fighting. And it totally wrecked my grades and wrecked my behavior and set me on a spiral. And the only thing that kind of brought me back was my crappy job at Friendly's scooping ice cream for $8. And it taught me invaluable skills about how to deal with workplace conflicts, how to, realize that I don't want to be in this job forever. I got to work even harder to pull myself out of it. And so I worry about kids, across the country. 50% of marriages end in divorce. It's not even considering all of the children who don't start in, families that are already married. They're coming home. Maybe there's not someone at home to help them with grades, help them out. What are they doing in their spare time? I think those kids would benefit so much just from having somewhere to work and somewhere to gain those workplace skills, even if it's not $15 an hour. So I thought you'd be open to that argument. It comes from the heart. Just wanted to hear your thoughts on it.
How old were you? When did you get this job for $8 an hour?
I was 15.
All right, so that was
16 rather. 16.
10 years ago?
$8, you said.
That was 10 years ago?
Oh, right.
Yes.
All right, so that's from an inflation standpoint, that's about $9.50. Okay, so you got paid at that time, right? You said 8, and as in today's dollars, that's $9.50. I do think that I would definitely be open to an exemption for people under 17, let's say, right? I would be open to that. I mean, I think there is some evidence that that high school students could lose some work because of this. But And so I would be open to that exemption. I mean, I don't know how many people fall into the category that you do where work, provided that type of sort of grounding. I imagine there's some, for other people, it's probably, maybe it's school sports or, other people, it's like, I don't know, whatever it is. But I am open to the idea of like an exemption for students in high school. A lower rate.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting suggestion, but would that take jobs away from the people who have people who are in those roles who need it to they have children or something already?
But I got news for you. If you have children, $9 an hour ain't gonna do it. And the value in a worker, who is making, who is, 22 or 25. I mean, I can tell you, I've worked with 16-year-olds, I've worked with 25-year-olds, and
what would preclude you from getting a job if you were paid $15 minimum wage? Just, what Sam's saying here is with inflation, your job was already higher.
Well, I would also, let me just add this one thing in terms of friendlies, okay? So if so what you're telling me is that job is not going to be available to you as a 16-year-old, right? Because friendlies is what? Does friendlies, like if it goes up to $15 an hour, like how many guys were there, guys, girls, how many people were there doing what you were doing at friendlies?
Maybe there were 2 or 3 other people on staff. I mean, the place went out of business eventually.
Okay, yeah, I know.
By the way,
I know.
Friendlies, excellent.
Yeah, I mean, you don't have to sell me.
Massachusetts establishment, we know.
Exactly.
Yes,
but here's my point. If people are coming in for ice cream, somebody's got to scoop it. They're not going to get a machine to do that. If it's $15 an hour, Friendlies is going to pay the $15 an hour. And what they're going to do is they're going to make the ice cream cone, instead of like whatever it was, $2.49 for a small and $4 for a medium and, $6 for a large. They're going to make it $6.50 for a large. They're going to make it I'm just throwing out numbers, but they're on the high end in terms of, that's what they're going to do. They still need somebody to scoop the ice cream. Now, there may be some other jobs. Fair. It's not going to be the Friendlies that where the jobs are going to go. There's definitely some areas where it's like, I'm going to put more work on this one worker instead of having, somebody do stuff in the stock room, back. I mean, when I was 15, 16, 14, I had a job after school that I don't know if it was, if the $15 minimum wage, they would have hired me. They needed somebody to do that work. And so they would have had to hire somebody. Maybe it would have increased the competition for that job if the money was a little bit more. But and so I do think there's going to be some job loss for high schoolers to the extent that there's data on that. There's some of that. But you can put in an exemption, and you can also sort of say like, but you only have available X percentage of your workforce can be these exemptions. So you can only hire so many high school students to do this work. I mean, there's ways of getting around that if that's really the concern.
Yeah, I mean, that is the primary concern. And, I hear what you're saying, and I agree with what you're saying, that even $9 an hour, even $15 an hour in some places is not going to be enough. Even 20 in some places is not going to be enough. But then I think if you raise, the price of having 3 people in the restaurant has a certain amount of operational income it can spend. Maybe it loses one person and it says, hey, servers, you're now responsible for scooping your own ice cream or something. There's business people have ways of working that out. So
yeah, but it just doesn't make, listen, it's a competitive disadvantage, right? I'm sorry. If Friendlies, if all of a sudden I've got to wait now longer for my ice cream, first of all, they're already doing Friendlies is doing a hyper efficient thing is that they could possibly do. If you're working at the Friendlies, they need you there. It's a function of demand. And now demand's also going to go up because now those high school, your friends, your buddies, who are working at the 5 and dime and they're making $15 an hour. Guess what they have time for, or they have cash for? More ice cream. That's basically how this works. Like I say, I'm okay with an exemption for, maybe 17 and under. And I would put a cap on, what those are. And you're only allowed to work so many hours a week anyways as a teenager. But you're going to generate, you're putting income into the economy. And those people are making $15 an hour. They spend it. They're not taking that money and going like, well, this is a good time for me to, invest in Apple. They spend that money. And they spend it at Friendly's.
That's true if they have jobs. I wasn't expecting to change your mind. I'm on the fence. I'm not really sure. I think my argument's an interesting one, but thanks for taking my call.
I think it's legitimate. I think it's like I say. I would exempt. I'm open to an exemption for high school students. I mean, your argument is a good indication of what the value of having an after school job, but
oh, absolutely. And I mean, there are even internships out there, right, that are just completely unpaid because they offer work experience, and obviously that's not enough for somebody who needs income to.
But you know who gets those internships, right?
Not me.
Yeah, well, you know why?
Who gets those?
Well, you know who gets those?
I gotta work.
Kids.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
The people who get those internships are kids of wealthy folks. And what that does is it starts you're giving wealthy people an advantage, an unfair advantage in the workplace. Because now when that kid who's had the intern shows up for the job, of course they got more experience in this. I don't think there should be unpaid internships.
They should be illegal too.
I think like across the board. We've had interns working on this program now and then. We don't have that many. In fact, we have one right now working for us remotely. But she's getting paid minimum wage. I won't do unpaid interns. For that reason. I don't think that should be legal. I mean, I think you should get, I think it's okay to get like, a mentoree or an intern, rate. I think it doesn't necessarily need to be $15 an hour, for intern, because if there is some experience and if you're getting maybe some school credit, I think you could do it, but I don't think it should be free. I don't think
I'm sorry, what if you're a hustler and you got the internship during the day and at night on the weekends, maybe, you're bartending or something.
That's great. Listen, there's always going to be
people who did that.
Yeah, there's always going to be exceptions. But I think, the point is that when we talk from a policy standpoint, you can't say like, well, we're going to have the hustler exemption. You can't do that. You got to make a policy and you got to try and create you got to create systems and structures that are going to sort of like help spread the wealth in whatever form it is. And so, I understand what you're saying, but listen, that person who is the hustler and who wants to go get that second job, or still may need it, good. The fact that they're putting that extra time in will probably definitely, come back to help them in some fashion. But there should be a standard minimum, right? Like you cannot have some professions reserved for wealthy people only. It's just that's not helpful.
Yeah, I think there's just something to be said for the value of that experience, not just for your resume, but for yourself as a person. And
well, I appreciate that.
And how long they last in life.
I think that experience is really valuable. But the point is that's why that opportunity should be available to people despite or regardless of the wealth of their family. And when you make internships free, only wealthy people can afford to have their kids do that internship. It's already somewhat problematic enough as it is, right? In terms of like the way that networks work, in terms of people knowing each other and et cetera, et cetera. But that's exactly the point, is that there is value in internships. And so you want to make those available to everybody. Appreciate the call, man.
But if the value, yeah, thank you. All right,
All right,
thank you.
bye-bye. Because you can't take that value and it cannot pay your rent. It can't pay for your clothes. You can't pay for your food. And so if you don't pay any money, then only kids who are getting support, students who are getting support from their families, ultimately are going to be able to do that. And they're leveraging their wealth, their family's wealth, to give them an advantage in the job force. And frankly, like, those people have already had those type of advantages throughout the system.
Agreed on internships. I mean, I don't want to get, but I don't see the need to have an exemption for high schoolers, just flat $15 minimum wage. A lot of people, specifically in lower income areas, have to start earning money to provide for their families at a lower age, and when they're younger than 18. And so you want to incentivize doing that in the right way as best as possible.
I mean, there is some evidence that some of those high school jobs will go away. I mean, that's the only reason why I say that. That's why I'm not terribly, like, I'm not insistent upon the same minimum wage for high school students as I would be for, but you know, I mean, I'm happy that I'm happy that, and I would make it higher than $7.25, but
it's not an argument against the general $15 minimum for the Fed, though. I think it has to, like, if we're talking about anything, it's minor exemptions to it, an asterisk.
Yes, and I say, and I would say that, like, look, as a political matter, I mean, in general, I would just raise the minimum wage, period, and I'd have no exemptions. But as a political matter, if you're going to, if that is, like, what Chris Coons' issue is, then I'd be fine in raising that minimum wage for people in high school to, I don't know, $12.50, $13. And then I would peg it to inflation like we have already.
Let's just say that then I just think you really are playing with fire with that.
You think it's a slippery slope?
I'm not making that argument. I just think, there's no need to make it more convoluted. And if it's already if you're making it $12 for kids, why not make it 15?
Well, why not make it 15? Well, I mean, I think that, like, just the value, like, if you go back and look at, like, just in the past year, 10 years, the value of that $8 that he got paid is now, $9.30. But if you go back, 20 years, it's more. I mean, you don't have teenagers can only work a certain amount. I mean, would you allow teenagers to work 40 hours a week?
No, I wouldn't. But the point is that when they are working, they should be making the same wage as the workers that are doing the same work full time.
Yeah, that's why I would cap the number of people that you can do on that. Like, that it cannot be.
But then it gets so, like, convoluted. I mean, why not just make it a flat $15 minimum wage if the same work is being done?
What if I was to tell you definitively that it's going to cut, like, you're going to lose 30% of those jobs?
That's a theoretical argument.
Well, I don't know. There is some data that says that. I mean, it's hard to find a study that doesn't show that it doesn't impact high schools, younger workers like that, high school workers.
I haven't seen those numbers, so I can't speak to that. But I
right. Well,
in principle,
to be continued.
In principle, the same work that is being done, if it's being done by high school students, they should be provided the same wage.
Fair enough. All right. Calling from a 701 area code. We will revisit this. Calling from a 701 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hello?
Hello?
Sorry, 1 second. Just had to switch to my phone. Hello. My name is Nathan from North Dakota.
Nathan from North Dakota, what's on your mind?
Sorry about that. I had to step outside the office real quick. I actually had a question or two for Matt, being a fellow North Dakotan.
Okay, Matt, you there?
So, a little nervous.
Don't be.
How do you how do you think your folks around in North Dakota area are thinking of Joe Biden at this time? And
do you have more of the question?
Oh no, please continue.
My parents are both fans because they were sick of the sort of excess of Trump, and like they've never been super partisan. The only time a sign has ever been in our front yard was the first Bush administration, but they're generally like in favor of Biden. To contrast with, say, Hillary Clinton, which they both left their ballots blank. So that's, I guess, the major difference. I think they like Biden.
Yeah, my folks basically equate Biden to the Antichrist at this point with the Keystone.
Oh, damn.
Oh, wow.
Well, yeah, see, that remains to be seen. I think they'll probably disagree with him on that, but we haven't really discussed it that much.
But my real question, and this is sort of a general for all of you, Shell Gasoline put out a report last year that they have past peak production and are falling at a rate about 1 to 2% a year. So with that in mind, do you think that North Dakota has any other field that they can specialize in? Because North Dakota only really has oil and farming. Or do you think they'll just become the new West Virginia in terms of them and coal?
I don't know. Because I mean, North Dakota, there's plenty of opportunity for renewables, I think, too. There's a lot of wind there. If you're talking about energy specifically, in terms of general industry, I mean, there wasn't a lot before the oil. I think it'll probably go back to that sort of dynamic. And yeah, farming, basically.
In the 80s, there's an oil boom crash. I'm just worried that it'll just crash again eventually.
Yeah, I mean, that's been the history of it. Although my understanding is this is the best boom that North Dakota's had in its history. But I imagine, yeah, it's going to dry up at some point.
Yeah. Well, sorry, I was so nervous, guys, but thanks for taking my call.
No, you
didn't
were
seem
great.
nervous.
You didn't seem smooth as butter.
If I become governor of North Dakota, I'll make sure like we don't go into decline though, and we transition into a social democracy in the center of North America.
Could happen. Could happen.
Hopefully, yeah. Well, have a good day, guys.
Thanks, you too.
Bye.
Appreciate the call.
Do we have time for Meghan McCain?
Yes. Where is the Meghan McCain?
Well, we added
after the sound came.
Right. Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay,
so-
let's play Meghan McCain.
Yeah, Meghan McCain. I'll just intro her real quick. Meghan McCain had another unhinged rant on The View today. This time, she was talking about representation in her job and qualified by merit, which is an interesting conversation for someone to be leading when she only got her job because of her last name. Let's take a listen.
Excluded women farmers. And so we're going to a place where even if people need money, even if people are qualified to get into Ivy Leagues, race and gender is more important than your skill qualifications, the content of your character. It is not what Martin Luther King Jr. preached. I think this is a very, very slippery slope. I was very surprised to hear someone like Tammy Duckworth say something like this. She got a lot of blowback from a lot of people, not just on the right. And I think this is actually just the natural progression of identity politics. And I will say, just to put a cap on this, The View is 25 years old next year. We've only had one Asian American co-host this show. So does that mean that one of us should be leaving at some point because there's not enough representation? We're talking about, is identity politics more important than qualifications of a job? And I think that's a question going forward that the progressive left is going to have to reconcile.
Pause it.
I mean, I think
There
that's
have
the
been,
end.
is that the end?
Yeah.
There have been more daughters of politicians on that show than Asian people of Asian descent? 3.
No, well, Abby, who's the third? Abby Huntsman, Meghan McCain.
Alicia Menendez has a guest spot on it at times.
Well, right, but then the full-time cast members, at least off the top of my head, are.
I've never met someone who has had more opportunity in television because of of her last name than Meghan McCain.
It is amazing that she had the gall to make that argument. And she seems concerned about her job security there, where at the end she goes, well, one of us might have to go. It's ironic that she's dressed as a member of the Capitol dwellers in the Hunger Games there, because one might have to be eliminated there. That or, a member of the Galactic Senate. I haven't necessarily decided.
I can't believe she mentions the Ivy League at the start of that. Like, we talk about legacies. Like, legacy admissions for the Ivy League is just appalling. You have like a 1 in 3 chance if your parent went to one of those to get in, if that low.
I know.
I did a comedy talk show pilot with her. She was a guest. It was like a panel show. And I will tell you something. I've met some people in the past who are not impressive. She is impressively high on that list.
Impressively unimpressive.
Indeed. I mean,
so she's going to lecture the world about meritocracy, and basically worried that there's going to be a game of musical chairs at The View, and that she's going to be the odd person out if they decide to have more Asian American representation. That's just a diatribe on her insecurity.
There's only 2 reasons why she's there. One is because she's John McCain's daughter, and 2 is because she pretends that she's more conservative than she is. Talk about identity politics. I mean, and also, that's all TV is.
She's there also because she's so bad at her job that she drums up ratings for The View because people want to tune in to see what batshit insane thing she's going to say next.
That's the job. Like, I mean, that's my point. It's like, what The View is literally the subtitle of that show could be like, different identities look at the news in a very sort of superficial way.
Yeah.
That would be the subtitle. The View, different identities look at the news in a way that's, just really easily digestible.
Yes, and Meghan McCain identifies as a conservative silver spoon brat who, on occasion, likes to dress like Padme from the Star Wars prequels.
Jordan Weissman tweets, writes about policy for Slate. Study confirms for the entire mid to late 20th century, Harvard was in fact a glorified networking club for wealthy prep schoolers. This is a NEBAR. This is the national. I can't remember what that acronym is, but this is a paper that is. I think it's peer reviewed if it's published.
National Bureau of Economic Research.
We first show that high-status students from prestigious private schools perform worse academically than other students, but are much more likely to join exclusive campus clubs. The club membership premium is large. Members earn 32% more than other students and are likely to work in finance and join country clubs, both the characteristics of the era's elite. So there you go.
I kind of stole that joke from Cody Johnson on Twitter. He said Queen and Naboo. I said... I didn't even. It was one of those, you hear a joke and then you think it's yours. I digress.
Meghan McCain is the Ben Dominic of broadcast journalism. All right, let's do some IMs here. Oh, and then I gotta go. I'm sorry, folks. Sam McKee. This is the worst episode of The Leftovers ever. Married to Mothra. Why do they want the pipeline? Just looking to kill off what's left of the natives? I don't. Carla works for McKinsey. Most internships are unpaid. Emma Powell-Bowner. I would like to know Emma's thought on the NHL referee controversy.
I really only just saw it today. Basically, they just admitted he got caught on a hot mic, for people don't know, penalizing a player as basically because they missed a call earlier in the game, and he just got fired. So my thoughts are is just, the NHL refereeing system is pretty poor. So this should not just be a firing of one guy, but an overhaul and a looking at the entire penalizing system, especially because it's just 2-minute power plays. It really affects the game.
I just had to turn off the phone system, folks. We don't have time. Travis from Pittsburgh. I agree with Emma. Equal pay for equal work. I was an engineering intern 6 years ago and made $14 an hour, which is the most I ever made at the time. The work I was doing was real work, making the company money. Sure, I needed some guidance, but everyone needs on board when they first start a job. If you create value for a company, you should be paid like any other employee doing the same work. Well, like I say, I would put some guardrails on this. Like you cannot have these jobs be substitutes for other ones. I mean, they have to be like a small percentage or a specific percentage of the workforce, and there has to be jobs that, if you're a major corporation, you shouldn't be hiring. I don't think I don't think you should have a sub minimum wage workforce. But I do think that there are I don't know. I mean, I think about that job I had. It literally was the 5 and dime. It was like a Dollar General, and it was not a, it was not a chain. And I don't know. I mean, I would need to look more at the data, but that's Teamster
for fair work, as they say in Game of Thrones.
Teamster for Chicago. You're really on the Game of Thrones today.
No,
From
I'm not.
Chicago.
I think that is my first
Oh, wait,
mention.
Game of Thrones.
I have
meant,
5
the other
nerdy
one?
references today. You got to
Yeah,
keep
the other
up,
one.
right?
What's that Jimmy Dore story you were going to cover yesterday? I'm always down to laugh at him. We're going to have to do that tomorrow.
No, well, tomorrow you won't be here.
All right, let's
We gotta save it for tomorrow. I mean, Friday.
Oh, let's do it Friday. Dr. Chaos MD. Every time you dunk on Meghan McCain, Dave Rubin, IDW people, or other conservative idiots, Michael gets a new tracksuit in heaven. Please don't stop. Libertarian Sam Seder. Yes, but if the high school student thinks they deserve slavery, shouldn't we deny them their wish?
That's good.
That's a good one. Wes Weaver. I don't know why everyone is shitting on McCain's hairstyle. Oh, Sam, can you provide a source on those minimum wage numbers regarding teen job loss? Almost every minimum wage study I've ever read says paying them equally as adults is more justified by the fact they spend a higher portion of the income compared to adults, and therefore their pay is more stimulating overall. I will check that. Fair enough. Robert Berkey. Sam, wages should be same across the board because productivity is the same. The company is making the same off their labor. Why should the labor be less? Strong feelings on this.
Sounds like I'm the fucking man.
Universal minimum wage. Sam, your Joe Manchin impression was spot on today, advocating for a sub-minimum wage for high schoolers for no reason. Great idea. F those high schoolers who are working so their family can pay rent and buy food.
Well, you're not saying fuck the high schoolers, but...
No.
But,
as a former 16-year-old that can only get food with my own wages, let's not support lower wages for high schoolers. Sam's Friendly Sunday. Regarding the caller with the divorced parents, there are older folks with no other job prospects that rely on these jobs to provide for their families. But if one thing I do wonder is raising minimum wage to 15 universally across the country is fair. For example, wouldn't we agree that in New York it should be at least 18, in Alabama probably 12? I actually think 15 is a baseline. I mean, I before you start doing regional differences. Sad man. Hey, Sam, where can I get the coffee mugs used in the studio? I don't even know where we got those. Those were like sort of pilots, if you will. Hello, Sam's Tushy. 5 and dime. Ha ha. You're definitely a boomer.
We should sell those though, because I feel like mugs are pretty popular.
We do have mugs on the thing, but it's a slightly different size. But maybe we should get a different one. Run PMC. You can adjust the hat, but the crown can still be small. Solidarity with all big heads. Have you ever had Moxie? Just heard of Mass Drink, and it sounds unreal. Moxie, that soda? Yeah, I've heard of that, I think.
That's Maine, though.
Local pizza historian, this guy snoring at the candle at both ends. How can you be sleepy time pillows if you want a period to be awake on your social media platforms? Admiral Coffee, as a leftist in law school, the idea of law as a distinct category from politics is bizarre. It doesn't sit right with me. Do you consider them to be separate in any capacity? I don't. I mean, I think if you watch this show for any period of time, like I think I mean, I think the least sort of like recognized part of our political system is our legal system. I mean, I don't, it doesn't, you know, that's always been my perspective. Okay, final IM of the day.
Charge.
Ravenswood. Air travel is an interesting factor, too. Instead of having higher-paying, white-collar jobs all over the country, just fly out professionals for weeks to months for a project. I know professional scientists and doctors who work up to 1/3 of the year in a state far from their home. Not sure what that's in response to, but...
The professionals all clustering in places around where they want to be.
From the interview today.
Yeah.
Emma, Matt, Brendan, good job today. See you tomorrow.
Might take all the strength I got to get to where I want, but I know somehow I'm gonna get there. I wasn't looking when I just got caught between the truth and the lie.